What's up, YouTube? Robbie Vape's back again, and today we have another head-to-head with the Sigelei 75W temp control versus a newcomer, the X-Power. Stay tuned. That is right, YouTube. Today we are doing another head-to-head matchup, this time between devices. This is kind of like the warm-up to the Sigelei versus the IPV 3Li, which will be coming out shortly in the next couple days. But until then, I wanted to do another head-to-head video for you guys. This is the Sigelei 75W temperature control device versus the X-Power by Ressar. This is a newcomer to the game. It is a really nice device. It surprised the hell out of me when I got it. And they are very well matched up, which is why I'm bringing you this video today. Obviously, much like you saw with the Smoke TFE4 and the Crown Tank head-to-head, if you watched that one, you know that I like to do head-to-heads with evenly matched devices. Whether it be tanks, whether it be hardware or mods, or whether it be whatever it is. The point is, I love to do head-to-heads when it's a very fair and even matchup. Let's talk about these two devices real quick before we go down and dirty with them, and a few things I want to mention, okay? First of all, the categories are very simple. We're going to be talking design, we're going to be talking about the chips, we're going to be talking about the battery life, and that is a big one here. Believe me, battery life is massive. We're also going to talk about overall vape production and flavor. And finally, we're going to finish off with a temperature control head-to-head showdown using the exact same tank on both these devices to test out which one is better for temp control. Now, with all that being said, a few things I want to specify here really quickly. First of all, I did not pay for either of these devices. This is on loan from someone, so I could use it for the purpose of review. I've had it for about 2 weeks now. This I've also had for 2 weeks, and this was given to me. Now, with that being said, I just wanted to get that out of the way. Next up, I want to talk about the pricing on this as well. Really quickly, I didn't include it in one of my categories, although I do think pricing is important. The pricing on both these devices is a little bit off. The X-Power on one hand, and this is Canadian retail by the way, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. The X-Power retails for $80 Canadian, and the Sigelei 75W retails for $100 Canadian, give or take depending on the store you go to. Now yes, I know you can get these devices cheaper online or from a different supplier, especially if you're down in the States. Keep in mind though guys, with the conversion rate that we're seeing these days up in Canada, our cost on a lot of the stuff shipping out from the States is very expensive. Best case, you're looking at saving anywhere from 10 to 20% on the device after everything's said and done. Now that's still 10 to 20%, so a lot of you are probably thinking, why would you go to a store and pay $100 for this, or pay $80 for this, when you can get it for cheaper in the States? Good point. However, my response to that is very simple. I would rather, personally, support a local brick and mortar, a place where I spend a lot of time, whether it be whatever store it is I'm at, it doesn't matter. The point is I spend a lot of my time in these brick and mortar stores, hanging out with people, talking to people, getting to know other vapors. It's a great experience. So the least I can do, in my opinion, is pay an extra 10 to 20% to get these devices there. The other addition to that is I don't have to wait for shipping. I don't have to worry about unexpected costs at the border. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff with these devices when I purchase them locally. So yes, I do pay more for a lot of things, as you've probably seen in a lot of my other review videos I've done. That is totally true. But keep in mind, I do it because I want to support the local brick and mortar stores here in Canada. And again, that's not a knock on anyone in the States. If I were to go traveling in the States, I'm sure I'd be picking up a bunch of stuff while I was down there at local brick and mortar stores down there. Yes, it's more expensive. They have overhead. They have additional costs. They have tax. They have markups, etc. But again, when it all comes down to it, what I really believe in buying from brick and mortar versus an online retailer is that you're paying not just for the device, but you're also paying for the experience of being in that store. Just a little rant I wanted to do before we got started, and I guess technically that was the first category was pricing, so yes, this X-Power is cheaper than the Sigelei 75W temperature control device. Just saying, okay? Now I don't have packaging for the Sigelei. I do have some for the X-Power. I'll briefly show it, but it's not going to attribute to the overall winner of this showdown. Just keep that in mind. If you want to see the packaging for the Sigelei 75W, There are a ton of videos out there showing you what you get with it. So with that being said, I think that about covers it. We're going to dive down and dirty, check out the quality, check out the chip, and check out and we're going to talk about battery life down there as well. And then we'll go back up top, do some vaping, show you guys which one I find works better, and my overall opinion on the two devices as a whole. So with that being said, guys, you know what time it is. It's time to get down and dirty with these two devices and check them out. All right, YouTube, we are down and dirty with these two devices, up close and personal. On the right-hand side, we have the Sigelei 75W temperature control, and on the left side, we have the X-Power by Ressar. I hope I'm saying that right. You can see the name right there. Both of these are single 18650 battery powered mods. So just keep that in mind going forward. And we will talk about battery life here shortly, but before we do, I'm just going to very quickly move these off to the side and show you the packaging for the X-Power. Here it is right here, the X-Power 2.0. The website here, Ressar.com. The color is silvery, which I like. Again, your authentication sticker over here. Think the unthinkable to spark is the motto or the tagline. And on the back, you got the X-Power, the USB charger, and a nice warning label as well. A QR code, 18 plus, of course, not for pregnant women. And again, the logo on the other side. When we push this out of the box, the device comes right up here, very clean. And once you move past the device, you then have a user manual. And at the bottom here, you actually have your USB charger. That's everything you get in the box. Very, very simple, very sleek, and pretty much no more than what you need, and nothing that you don't need in here as well. So all that goes back together. We're going to put this box off to the side and go back to these two devices. Here they are. Now, a question I'm going to answer before we even get started is why these two devices? Obviously, a lot of people would probably rather see a Sigelei 75W temperature control versus the IPV-D2. And yes, I agree, that would be a great matchup to do. However, I personally prefer this over the D2 for my use from it, but I do have very limited use on the D2. I've only used it a little bit, not a ton, so keep that in mind. But that being said, I did prefer this over the D2, and I felt like this was a fairer matchup head-to-head. Now, first thing we're going to talk about is just the overall craftsmanship, design, things like that. As you can see, very slight button wobble or button rattle. Nothing too crazy. Doesn't actually really make any sound. It's just a little bit loose up here. Not too bad at all. Definitely bearable. Next thing we're going to talk about on the X-Power is the charge port. The charge port is on the side of the device. The Sigelei's is on the bottom, as you can see here. Both of them are micro USB charge ports, and both of them will charge your batteries. That being said, I don't necessarily recommend using these to charge your batteries. Personally, I feel you should invest in a proper battery charger, which will charge your batteries not only quicker and more efficiently, but also in a safer manner with protection switches and things like that that they have built into them. These are safe, don't get me wrong, to a certain degree, but I don't know, I have some hesitations about charging a device or charging a battery that's actually in a device just while you're charging it. So that's just something I have to admit I'm not personally comfortable with, and I prefer a battery charger. You may feel differently. Either way, it teach their own. Okay, so craftsmanship as well. We're going to talk about how to take the battery out on these and how to put a battery in. On the X-Power, all we do is pull this out. There we go. And we have an AWT in here right now. Now I have run them both with the exact same batteries. I had an HG2 in each of these when I did the battery test on these, just so you're aware, but right now they both have different batteries in them. Again, just a little bit of a warning ahead of time. I want to make sure I cover that, and no one is going to say in the comments, oh, well, use different batteries, and that's why certain battery life didn't last longer. No, I used the exact same batteries for the battery test, just to prove it out, but again, we'll get to that later. So here you go, and again, this design is a lot like the IPV-D2. It's got that single battery kind of nooked in here with a little cover that goes over top. This has the ball bearings on it, so it is a very tight grip. For anyone who is worried about it slipping or anything like that, it will not. It takes a lot of pressure to take this apart, which I like about it. Moving on, you have the bottom, you have some vent holes down here for the battery, which is a very nice touch. And of course, you have the screen 5 clicks on, 5 clicks off, but we'll get to that later on when we look at the chips. Next, looking at the Sigelei 75W temperature control device. Again, like I mentioned before, you do have that charge port on the bottom, as you may be able to see, and below that you have some vent holes for the battery. Right here we have the sides of it, and if we take them off, they are magnetized, and the battery just sits in right here. You can take both of these covers off, exposing the battery on both sides, and you can just push it through in order to take it out. It does make it easier to take out when you are trying to remove a battery and replace it. That being said, and you also have vent holes on the right side as well. You have the logo down here. I mean, nothing too crazy. It's a metal design, and this one is too. Overall weight on both of these with a battery inside them is definitely right around the same amount. They're both heavier devices considering their size. I like them. I like a heavier device. Now overall size though, as we can see if we put them next to each other, the X Power is slightly smaller. And this just feels so good in the hands, I gotta tell you guys. This one, I really am disappointed with Sigelei on this overall design on this particular device. And the reason being, I feel like they went with a more squared off design. Yes, they rounded off the corners a little bit, but they kind of went back to their 150 and 100 watt plus roots of that square, kind of uncomfortable design when you're holding it in your hands, because it does tend to press into your palm a little bit, and it's not sharp, and it's not as sharp as what the 100 plus was, but it is definitely annoying, and it feels bulkier than what it actually is. So just keep that in mind going forward. This one, on the other hand, has a great feel to the hand. It just wraps around you wrap around your fingers. It feels great. It's perfectly well balanced. It's a really nice device. And again, it does remind me a lot of the IPV-D2. That being said, moving forward, I think the next thing we're going to talk about is the chip on each of these devices. We're going to start with let's start with the Sigelei this time. So the Sigelei chip, here we go here. As you can see, I have the crown tank on here, by the way. This one has a smoke TFE4. No particular reason why these two are on there in this order. I just decided to do it. So what we'll do first is we'll turn off the device and turn on the device. Turning it off, very simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. 5 clicks on, 5 clicks off. It actually looked like it shut off a little bit early there on the off button. It looked like it was only 3, so let's try that again. No, it's definitely 5 clicks to turn on and off. Just wanted to verify that. I must be seeing things. Anyways, moving on. Next, we're going to talk about how to change between the different modes. But before we do, let's just look at the screen here real quick. As you can see, you have your resistance level at the top left. You have your battery on the far left. Underneath resistance, you have your voltage. And of course, to the right of that, you have your power. This is your wattage. Moving on, we can also select to do temperature control. To do that, we hold the up and down button together and just keep it held. And now we can see we have the option to select from power or temp. Temp being temperature, of course. We move over, we select temp, we click the fire button, and now it's set to temperature mode. As you can see here, 625 degrees Fahrenheit, 64.9 watts, resistance 0.22, voltage as well, and battery life as well on that side. You can adjust the wattage if you'd like. We can adjust it up and down. It does go up to 75 watts. Both these devices are 75 watt devices, and both of them do temperature control. If we want to adjust just the temperature on here, we click this once. As you can see here, it's flashing, and we now have the option to go up and down on this device to adjust the temperature. Now this device goes up to 662 degrees, as you just saw, 662 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the maximum output. I don't know if I recommend vaping at 662. It's a very, very hot vape. I've done it before myself, and I will admit it's very hot, and I'm not even sure it's quite safe at that temperature, to be completely honest. Now again, if you want to scroll over more, it will convert to Celsius. As you can see here at the high end of Celsius, which is 350 degrees Celsius. We can scroll down now. If we want to go back, and this goes all the way down to 100 degrees Celsius, but if we want to go back, there's a very quick way to do it. If we click up when we're at the maximum Celsius, it brings us to the maximum Fahrenheit. If we keep clicking up, it goes back to Celsius. So this will switch back and forth between your top measurements of temperature. We can scroll all the way down in Fahrenheit and show you the minimum Fahrenheit temperature is set to, let's just see here, 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we're at the low end for Fahrenheit and Celsius. You just click the down button, I guess, if you will, or the right button, depending on how you're looking at this. And just keep going back and forth, and it'll keep switching between Celsius and Fahrenheit. We're going to crank this back up here. We're going to go to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, just because that's what we're going to be doing the tests on for the temperature control portion. And as you can see here, it's set to 74.9 watts. Now, moving on from that, to lock the device, the power button and down should lock the device for you. Sorry, the power button and up or left is the lock button. I got used to the X power a little bit too much, but we'll go into that later on. So system is locked. Okay, so sorry guys, we're back. It took me a while. For some reason, I was hitting the left and power button and it just wasn't unlocking the system there. But we are back. Left and power button, left and power button, or up and power button, are the actual ways to lock and unlock the device. It is the same button. I don't know why it didn't work there for a second. I had to pull it up or take it off camera for a second just to make sure it worked, but it is working now. Now overall, other than that, the chip, very simple. Like I said, very straightforward chip, very easy to use. Nothing too crazy about it that makes it, too complex. With this chip, again, you have some really simple features. Only this time you have a bonus feature. If we want to change from wattage to temperature control, all we do is hold these two buttons down. Now it's in temp mode. But further to that, if we want to change to mech mode, we hold these two buttons down, and now we have a mech mode on this. So that's right, you not only get the wattage mode, you not only get the temperature control mode, you also get a mech mode on here, which is awesome. Now again, you can see here at the bottom it does say mech. You have your volts, you have your resistance up at the very top, and the wattage will be produced when you actually hit the fire button. So right now it's saying it's vaping at 69 watts in mech mode, which is pretty cool. Moving on from there, click them again, we're back into wattage mode. You can see a screen here as well. Same thing, resistance, voltage, wattage is the mode that's set on. Your battery life on the far left. I did get a piece of dirt in here by accident. That's on me, so it's going to have a little bit of a speck on there, but just ignore that for this video, please. Like I said, that's on me, not the device by any chance, or by any means. Here we have the wattage that's displayed. Wattage up and down, of course, very simple, very straightforward, and like I mentioned before, this is a 75 watt device as well. Now to move into, to lock the device and unlock the device, should be power button and down. We now have the key locked. Power button down again is unlock. Power button and up does nothing in wattage mode. However, if we go over to temperature control mode, which again, as you can see, will have the exact same setup as for resistance, wattage this time instead of voltage, the mode it's in, which is temp, and the temperature of the set temperature for the device, and the battery life, of course, same design. But here, if we push the power button and the up button, or the left button, again, depending on how you're looking at this, we can now adjust the wattage on the left-hand side. And that's how you adjust the wattage. Very, very simple and very easy to use. Click the power button when you're set. Down and the fire button is, of course, lock again. Down and the fire button, unlock as well. So that's pretty much the chip. I don't think I have to get into too much more with that. We're going to turn it back to wattage mode because both these are using Canthal coils, not nickel coils or anything like that. So you have that right there, as you can see. Again, those are the chips that you have with each of these devices. I will say this, I was a big fan of this Sigelei chip, and to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed they didn't use this chip in the Sigelei 150 watt temperature control device. I really like this chip. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's easy, and I really wish they would have used this in the 150 temperature control, but that's just a bit of a side note. Moving on, we're going to talk about battery life last in the up close portion of this. And as you can see, like I mentioned before, there are two different batteries in here now. However, at the time of the testing for battery duration, I used the exact same battery, which was the LG HG2 3000 milliamp hour battery in each of these to try and prolong the battery life. And I will say this, the clear-cut winner by a mile in battery life is the X-Power. This thing lasted almost 4 hours at maximum output 75 watts in wattage mode with that LG HG2. The Sigelei 75 watt temperature control in wattage mode, I might add, at 75 watts only lasted about 2.5 to 3 hours. It was right in between there. if you put this in temperature control mode, I only got under 2.5 hours with it. I got probably closer to 2 hours than 2.5 hours out of this in temperature control mode. Now again, I vape mine pretty hot. As you can see, I like it at about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. And this one was pretty much the exact same situation. In temperature control mode, I did lose out on battery life. But unlike the Sigelei, I was still able to get about 3 hours of battery life out of this little device in temperature control mode, which I thought was awesome. Keep in mind, guys, we had the exact same battery in each of these devices when doing that test. So there is no room for error in that. There's no room for anything like that. This is straight up based on my opinion at my vaping style. Of course, if you don't max out the device, you can probably expect to get a lot more battery life out of it than what I did, depending on how low you like to vape. But for me, I like a very hot vape, and I easily max these two devices out, no problem at all. Now, I should also mention I was using the exact same tank on both these devices to make it fair, and at 75 watts on the wattage mode, I ended up using the crown on both these devices. In temperature control mode for both these devices, I ended up using the Reborn tank with the nickel coil in it, which I have off to the side here. And again, this was my preferred choice for using temperature control tanks on these two devices. They both used the exact same tanks. Now again, that's pretty much covering battery life. So yes, the clear-cut winner in battery life definitely has to go to the X-Power. No question in my mind, the X-Power clearly outperformed and outlasted the Sigelei 75W, which in my opinion is just a battery whore. It does not go easy on the batteries. So with that being said, guys, that is the up-close portion of this. We're going to head back up top, have some vapes on these two, and find out which one vapes better, at least for my vaping style. So let's take it back up top and talk about it a little bit more. All right, YouTube, we are back up top with the X-Power and the Sigelei 75W temperature control devices. And right now what we're going to be doing is a wattage test or a vapor test to test the kind of vapor and the flavor you're going to get from each of these devices, and if it even varies at all, to be honest. Now both these batteries are pretty much fully charged with the exception of maybe 10 minutes of use in between setup here and in between the up-close portion and the intro. So they're both very close to fully charged. That being said, in order to keep things fair, we're also going to only be using the crown tank on each of these devices. So it's going to be quite a bit of cutting in and out because I'm going to have to take the crown tank off one device, put it on the other, and then do the actual test again. And again, what we're looking for here is vapor production and flavor, and if it even varies at all in the actual wattage mode here. So with that being said, let's get started. We have the Sigelei 75W temperature control device set to 60 watts already. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. It's a little bit far away, but hopefully you can see that. And using the crown tank with the 0.25 ohm coil in here. So let's take a hit and see what it looks like. Nice vapor production, nothing wrong with that. Really good flavor, at least for the crown tank at 60 watts, which, to be honest, I mean, you're going to get optimal flavor out of the crown tank at 80 watts plus, or 80 plus watts, just my opinion. But again, that's not bad vapor, not bad flavor for 60 watts. Let's switch the devices and see how the X-Power performs. Alright guys, we are back. We've put the crown on the X-Power here. It is set to 60 watts as well. Again, I'm not sure if you can see that, but hopefully you can. So 60 watts on the X-Power with the crown tank. Let's see how it vapes. Again, really nice vapor production. Flavor was pretty much the exact same. I'm not anticipating flavor to change between these two devices. They're both going to have about the same amount of flavor. The big question is, how hard do these hit with the wattages they're set to? So that was at 60 watts on the X-Power. I'm now going to switch back to the Sigelei just for the sake of continuity purposes. Go to 65 watts on this device, and we're going to test out the vapor and flavor on that one as well. Alright guys, we are back. I have the crown tank on the Sigelei 75W temperature control mod, and here we see it's set to 65 watts. Hopefully again you can see that, but again I will have little subtitles down below just to show you what the vaping or what power I'm vaping at for each of these trials. Anyways, with that being said, let's take a hit off the crown tank on the Sigelei 75W at 65 watts. Again, really good vapor production. Flavor is getting there. It's getting a little bit better. At 65 watts, I'm getting a little bit more flavor. But again, it's a crown tank. That's pretty much what I expected to happen. You're not going to hit good flavor until at least 70 to 75 watts. And in my personal opinion, 80 plus watts is the way to go on this tank. Just my opinion though. Let's switch the crown tank onto the X-Power and see how it does at 65 watts. Alright guys, we've set it to 65 watts. Hopefully again you can see that. If not, no big deal. Caption below. 65 watts, crown tank, X-Power. Here we go. Here's what it looks like. Again, really good vapor production. Flavor is about the same. Didn't expect to change. Let's swap back. Let's see what happens at 70 watts on the Sigelei 75W device with the crown tank. Alright guys, 70 watts, Sigelei 75W crown tank. One thing I did forget to mention is that both of these have buttery smooth 510 connections on them. So getting the tank on and off is a breeze. I've had no issues with either one of these. I don't know if maybe any of you have, but so far it's been a dream. They are super, super smooth. Anyways, that being said, let's get back to vaping. 70 watts, crown tank, Sigelei 75. Really nice vapor production at 70 watts. Flavor's getting there for sure. It's starting to get up to the point where it's going to start getting some really nice flavor out of it. That was the 75 watt Sigelei. Let's see how the X-Power does. Alright guys, 70 watts on the X-Power with the crown tank. One other thing I forgot to mention is that every time you put a device, or every time you take off a device and put it back on the X-Power, it does actually ask you if you have a new coil or not. Little feature, but it may count for something, okay? So keep that in mind. It does ask that. So far the Sigelei hasn't asked me that once. I find that interesting because this one does. Anyways guys, 70 watts, X-Power, crown tank, here we go. Again, really nice vapor production. The flavor's starting to come out. I'm not seeing much of a difference, to be honest, in the actual vapor production on either of these devices. Let's crank them both up to 75, max them out, and see what happens. Alright guys, 75 watts, Sigelei 75 watt, crown tank. Let's see how it hits. Great vapor production. This is why I like to max out these devices when I'm using them, because I use tanks such as the Crown, the TFE4, the Magnus, things like that are all really good at 75 watts maxed out. In fact, they perform better even at higher wattages, but for the sake of this video, at 75 watts, that's when I'm getting my preferred vapor and flavor out of both these devices, is maxing them out. So that was a Sigelei. Let's see how the X-Power handles it. Alright guys, X-Power, 75 watts, the crown tank on top. Let's see how it vapes. Really nice flavor, really nice vapor production, and overall in the actual wattage modes on both these devices, I think I have to give it a tie. Both these devices are excellent in high wattages, and at 75 watts it is the perfect vape on both these devices. It is a very satisfying vape, even for myself who's more of a hot or warm vapor type of guy. I still prefer, or I still find that it's very satisfying at 75 watts, so for what it's worth, just wanted to let you guys know. Next up, we're going to be switching to the Reborn tank, which I have right here with a nickel coil in it. And instead of working way up through all the different temperatures, what I'm going to do is just vape them at 2 different temperatures and let you be the judge of which one performs better. We're going to be vaping at 450, which is a lot of people's right around their preferred range. I know people range anywhere from 420 to 480 typically, so I'm going to do almost in the middle at 450 degrees on both these devices. We're going to max out the wattage for that. And then after that, what we're going to do is max out both these devices. So that's 572 degrees Fahrenheit on the X-Power and 662 degrees Fahrenheit on the Sigelei, and see what happens there. So let's start with the Sigelei. Put it on, set the temperature to 450 degrees with maximum wattage, and see what happens. Alright guys, hopefully you can see this. 75 watts and 450 degrees Fahrenheit with the Reborn tank on top of it. Let's see what happens and see how it performs. A little bit of a wispy inhale on that, or a little bit of wispy vape. The air holes are wide open on this, just keep that in mind, and I will keep it open on the other one as well. That was 450 degrees at 75 watts. I'll do one more hit at that, and then we'll move on to the X Power and see how it performs. Alright guys, Reborn tank, 450, 75 watts. Let's see how it performs. Definitely a thicker vape, definitely a denser vape. Really nice vapor overall. That was at 450 degrees. Let's try it again and see what happens. Alright guys, here we go. 662 watts, 662 degrees Fahrenheit, 75 watts on the Sigelei. Let's see how it performs. Beautifully dense, warm vape, super flavorful. I love it. Let's take one more hit, then we'll move back to the X Power and see how it performs at 572 degrees Fahrenheit, which is maxing that particular device out. Alright guys, 572 degrees Fahrenheit and 75 watts, maxing this device out. Let's see how it performs. Again, super dense cloud, super good flavor, and really warm, but it does regulate itself, as you may be able to hear. When it begins to maybe get dry or anything like that, it will start to tone it down a little bit, and then it'll start to ramp back up once that wick is re-wicked, once the cotton is re-wicked in this tank. I'll do one more hit just to do a comparison and show you what it looks like. Really dense vapor, really thick clouds, great warm vape, very flavorful. Both of them maxed out, perform very good. And again, going back to which one do I prefer, honestly, the Sigelei might be a little bit warmer and might produce a very little bit more vapor, but it's very close, especially considering the Sigelei is supposedly hitting up to 662 degrees Fahrenheit, and this one's only hitting at 572. It is way too close to call for sure. So that being said, we've talked about price, which wasn't really supposed to be a category, but it ended up being one anyways. We talked about the craftsmanship and design, we talked about the chip, we talked about battery life, and we just went through a full vapor test to find out which of these perform better. In the Canthal mode or in wattage mode, both these perform very well, and both of them were pretty much on par with each other, neck and neck the entire way. At low temperature mode, 400, or I shouldn't say low, but at 450 degrees Fahrenheit on both these devices, the X Power did perform better, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure you saw that as well. So that, again, just based on what you saw, I think it's fair to go with the X Power on that one. At maximum wattage though, and maximum temperature on both these devices, 662 for the Sigelei, 572 for the X Power. They both perform very well, and that is personally how I prefer to vape, is a very dense, warm, flavorful vape. So overall, which of these gets the win? Honestly, these are both great devices. If you have a Sigelei 75 watt, I'm sure you're happy with it. I know I would be too. I'm debating on actually going out and purchasing one of these just for the fact that I have to give it back. So I can see the appeal on this. It's a great little device. The downsides though, the biggest downside on the Sigelei is the battery life. It is awful. It is one of the worst battery lives I've ever seen in a device. It is not great, and be prepared to carry at least 2 extra batteries on you, including a fully charged one to start the day off, if you vape like I do. The X Power, on the other hand, great battery life for a single 18650, maxing out the device over and over again, and it does perform very well. We saw the flavor test, we saw the vapor test. It is performing pretty much on par with the Sigelei, even when the Sigelei is maxed out. It is very close. Maybe the Sigelei has a slight edge on it, but it's not very noticeable, to be honest. Both of them do hit very well. That being said, when you start including the price in the top, and when you start talking about price in this, you will start to notice that I'm kind of leaning toward the X Power. It's a cheaper mod. It's $80 Canadian versus $100 Canadian. I personally would go with the X Power if I could only have one of these mods. Just me. Based on everything I did here today, I don't know if you agree, maybe you disagree. Let me know down below in the comments what your thoughts are and what your opinions are on these two devices. And hopefully this has been a helpful review to everyone out there watching. So, of course, as always, YouTube, until next time, happy vaping.